I'm Noel,
I'm Jenny.
And I'm Cole.
and we're living overseas on a dime.
That's a channel. So yeah.
Hi everyone, welcome to Living Overseas on a Dime. I hope you've been keeping well, and today we have a pretty interesting topic that I think many of you are going to enjoy. And that's the topic of where to retire in Mexico, specifically beach locations. Now, I know many people love the beaches of Mexico, and we definitely do too. Mexico is a beautiful country, and one of the biggest perks to Mexico is the absolutely gorgeous beaches. And the thing that's kind of cool about Mexico is that there are so many different areas that you can check out beach-wise. You know, you have the West Coast, you have Baja, you have the East Coast, the Riviera Maya, like there's just almost no limit. And today's list isn't really a definitive list, it's just kind of ideas if maybe you haven't thought of these places. Don't let this list limit you, but maybe it'll just give you some different ideas and some information that maybe you didn't have before. So let's get started. The first location on our list today is often referred to as Los Cabos. And Los Cabos is actually two cities. One is Cabo San Lucas and the other is San Jose del Cabo. Now these are kind of like sister or brother cities. Personally, I like to think of Cabo San Lucas as the little kind of naughty brother, and San Jose del Cabo is the older, more respectable brother. But you know what? They each have their own charm, and one of the things that I think is majorly to his advantage is its location. It's located on Baja Sur. It's not very far really from the United States. It's on that same peninsula as California if you go down there. And it's also nice that it has its own international airport. It's not right in Los Cabos, but it's not very far away. It's a short drive. So the population for the Los Cabos area is approximately 200,000, though that has grown a bit in the last few years. And something to be aware of, I think Los Cabos is often a place that is included in a lot of resort packages and whatnot. So that is kind of true about it, especially with Cabo San Lucas, which has a kind of a more party type atmosphere. It's generally quite popular amongst students on the March break. And you do find a lot of places that will purely accept US dollars there, and not uncommon at all. San Jose del Cabo is a little bit different. It's more laid back, has a fair bit more Mexican charm, and just isn't as much of a party atmosphere, a bit more of a Mexican style, really. Now, when it comes to prices, both of them are moderately expensive, but in San Jose del Cabo especially, if you look, you can find longer term deals, and by that I mean 6 months to a year, that are more reasonable, around the $1,000 a month range. So between 15,000 to 20,000 pesos a month for rent for a half decent place. Now, remember, this isn't going to be a super fancy Western style condo. Like, you will pay through the nostrils for that for sure. But when you're looking, you can find pretty decent places for this price. Now, when it comes to the weather, which I think is important, because you know what, I think a lot of people maybe have specific types of health issues or arthritis or things that they need to consider in relation to weather. Los Cabos is a little bit different than a lot of the other beach locations in Mexico in that it's quite dry. So if that is an issue for you, it's something to consider. However, it is also a fair bit cooler in the winter. Now, that being said, it's still not as cold as, upper Midwest or Canada or anything like that. But, it's just something to be aware of. If you want somewhere that's hot all year round, it's not really. It gets a bit cooler in the winter. It's still not cold, but something to be aware of. And in Los Cabos, like I said previously, there is a fair amount of American influence in the whole area. So if that's something where you want to be able to use your US dollar, maybe that's a pro. For other people who are looking for a more Mexican experience, it's not so much of a pro. When it comes to the actual sort of activities, the resort-like nature of the cities does show itself, because there are a lot of nightlife type activities, bars, shows and bars, things along those lines. But that being said, there is still a decent expat community there, more of a kind of, winter-based one. But still, there are some good expat groups. And if you have a look on Facebook, you can find, that's a good place to look in general for finding the sort of assistance you need maybe for relocating. However, if you're looking for a very in-depth Mexican experience with colonial architecture, it's probably not the place for you. That's not saying that it isn't beautiful, because man, if you look at the beaches there and just some of the actual mountain scenery and whatnot, it's beautiful and it's very unique. So, there are pros and cons to every location, and I hope that this introduction to Los Cabos is helpful. The next location we'll be talking about today is Mazatlan. Mazatlan was a much more popular place probably about 10 years ago or so. It hasn't fallen the way that Acapulco has, by any way. And you know what? There's no reason it should. First of all, it's located on the west coast of Sinaloa, and it's quite far from the capital there, but it still has its own airport, the international airport. So that's something to be aware of for connecting flights to the United States or Canada. It's not as well served as some of the bigger airports like Baja or Puerto Vallarta or Cancun. However, generally you can get to a connecting city that will get you to whatever hometown you need to go to without much problem. The population is a fair bit larger. It's over 500,000 people. And that kind of shows itself in that it has a bit more infrastructure. There's a bit of a better bus system, and it has a fair bit more than maybe some of the smaller places wouldn't have. The weather, it's somewhat cooler than the cities further south, especially if getting way down into Oaxaca and Hualtuco and things along those lines. However, it's still quite humid, and kind of a unique aspect to Mazatlan is it's very windy. There's a fair amount of, there is surfing there, so you can surf, and I think there's even windsurfing as well. So if those are the sort of activities you might be interested in, you might want to look into it more. One of the major advantages to Mazatlan is that it's much more reasonably priced than a lot of the larger resort towns. Now, there is a reason for that. There's less American influence, and it's a bit more of a Mexican holiday location. There's still, Western holiday folk there and snowbirds and whatnot. But it's definitely a city, and this is something to be aware of. It's definitely a city that you need a bit more Spanish than, say, in Cancun or Los Cabos. Now, that being said, it also has a lot more on the cultural side of things. The centro area in Mazatlan is beautiful. It's got a very unique colonial style with beautiful, colorful buildings, and even a rather old, though restored, famous theater in the main area. Now, part of the reason for this is that Mazatlan is one of the oldest cities, if not the oldest city, on the west coast of Mexico, founded in 1531. And even prior to that, it did have an indigenous population there. But on top of that, it's had a fair amount of immigrants. There's a German immigrant population that was there, and even as far as Chinese immigration to that area, which will be interesting, I think, to check that out. I kind of wonder, do they have a Chinatown? I don't know, I guess we'll see. It also has just a gorgeous long malecon, the pathway that you can walk down. I think it's something like 6 miles, 10 kilometers, something like that. Like it's long. It might even be longer. Everything I've seen, it's just got a nice bike area and running area. And for me as a runner, I'm really looking forward to being able to take advantage of that. There is a decent expat community there. I've been kind of involved in some of the Facebook groups, chatting it up, seeing what exactly is going on there. But it's not huge. There's definitely smaller groups, but they're all very helpful and can get you, help you find what exactly you're looking for. What is interesting in that it's not just a very not Western, a very American-Canadian based resort town. There's more to it. It has a lot of local Mexican people living there. And as a result, it's not just a nightlife based entertainment. Now, what I mean by that, like for me, I like classical music, I like going to concerts and things, but I don't want to just go to pubs and watch concerts in pubs. I'm very interested in being able to go to an actual symphony or go see an opera or go see a classical guitar and flute duet. And this is something that Mazatlan has in comparison to a lot of the other resort towns that maybe don't have that, and they cater more to a bar party crowd, maybe get some decent DJs, but not so much for, you know, old farts like me who like to listen to maybe a Mozart symphony, like who knows, you know? So that is definitely something that makes Mazatlan stick out to me personally, and I hope that this has helped you to have a better idea as Mazatlan as a potential place for you to live in.